Hi, I'm Andrea and welcome to Productive C#. In this video, I want to talk about the annotation context and the warning context that is related to the nullable reference type feature introduced in C#8. In a previous video, I mentioned that you can enable this feature by going to the csproj file and setting the nullable property to enable. As soon as you do that, all the code semantics change and the compiler starts to treat reference type as non-nullable. In addition to that, it starts to provide a lot of warnings that when you're actually violating this rule. But this can be quite overwhelming if you are starting from a legacy project when this feature obviously didn't exist before. So Microsoft allows you to be a bit more granular in how you specify and enable these nullable reference types. So before actually going to the nullable directive, I want to tell you about the warning context. So it's possible to specify warnings in here instead of actually saying enable. And what this setting does is only enabling the warnings engine in C#8 related to the nullable reference types, but it doesn't enable the feature in terms of semantics. So when you set the nullable property to warnings, all the compilers flow analysis starts and shows you the warnings, but the compiler is still treating all the reference type as nullable. Okay, so it's effectively kind of like partially enabling the feature, but doesn't without the semantic aspect of it. And here you can see that instead of getting 4 warnings, you're now getting only 1 warning. That is a possible dereference of product or category. We know the product or category could be null if the name doesn't start with L and the compiler is helping you. However, nothing changed in terms of the semantic of your code. And this could be very useful if you want to start only to fix some of the warnings and identify some of the bugs in your code base, but you are not quite ready to jump on board with a feature completely and start to change the semantics of your code. Okay? In addition to that, it's also possible to enable the warning context using a nullable directive. So here, for example, I could disable the feature entirely, but then I could go at the top of the file and specify nullable enable warnings. When I do that, I'm only telling the compiler to enable the warnings context for this particular file and nothing else. So if you can imagine, you can gradually add these nullable directives to your code base file by file and gradually fix problems, okay? Instead of having all the projects at the same time or all the solution, okay? You can effectively wrap portion of the code, like let's say I can put the nullable enable warnings here and only enable it after this nullable directive, okay? And you could stop nullable using nullable disable warnings, and now you effectively disable. So you are saying for these 2 lines of code, please enable the warning context. For all the other lines of code, don't. Okay? So you have very fine control on how you can enable the warning context in your project. Okay? So let me remove that and add it back at the top of the file. Okay. If you want to enable the rest of the feature, that means enabling the semantic change that all reference type will be treated as non-nullable, you need to also enable the annotation context. So when you enable the annotation context, now the compiler is doing more. So let me enable it for this file as well. And I can enable the warnings here as well. Let's see what happens. So now I'm enabling the annotation context and the warning context for both of the files. As you can see now, all the 4 warnings are back. Okay? So enabling the warning context and the annotation context is effectively the same as enabling the entire feature. So I don't really need to specify all of these 2 directives. I can just say nullable enable here and nullable enable here without specifying anything, and that's effectively the same. Okay? And when you're ready, when you cover all the files in your project, you can remove it completely from here, from your files, and just add enable here at the project level. Okay? So all of the things I've shown you now effectively allows you to gradually move a code base from not using the nullable reference type feature to using the features completely in a gradual way. File by file, project by project, starting from enabling only the warnings, then adding the annotation context, and then changing the semantic of your code, and then fully utilizing the nullable reference feature in the entire code base. That is the ultimate goal, so that you can get full support from the compiler to avoid nullable reference exceptions in your code bases. So that's pretty much it for the video. So remember, you can, if you want, enable the feature directly using nullable enable or specifying nullable enable in your project. But if you want to go more slowly and you only want to start by enabling the warning context, you can do so, fix some warnings, and then gradually move to use nullable enable across your code base. So that could be as a more slow process towards using this new feature. Thank you very much for listening.